Chapter 2, continued. This is going to be Chapter 02.03, main lecture. Okay, death and dying. Death is likely to be either quite sudden, usually unexpected, or after a long illness. What are the steps of the grieving process? So if a person dies suddenly, they're not the one grieving, right? The people left behind are the ones grieving. What are the steps in the grieving process?
Denial.
Pardon?
Denial.
Denial is number one. Just so you all know, I have a hearing problem. We haven't covered this yet, but this is a good time to cover it. I have a hearing problem. When I was very, very young, I was almost legally deaf. I couldn't hear at all. When I was 16, they cut my right ear off and they rebuilt the inside of my ear. When I was 18, they cut my left ear off and they rebuilt the inside of my left ear. For a long time, my hearing was considered normal, but I'm starting to lose hearing in my right ear again. So when I say pardon, it's really because I didn't hear you. So if you could be a little bit louder, I would really appreciate it. And I could blame it on the fact that I think the camera's not picking up what you're saying. That's really not it. It's because I just didn't hear you. Okay, so the stages of grieving. The first one is denial. Give me an example of denial.
Not believing their actual diagnosis, or...
I always get the E's and the I's screwed up. Here's IE. Okay. So not believing their actual diagnosis. So when they say denial, when we say denial, what is a phrase that goes along with that?
It's not just a river in Egypt?
Nope. It was funny though. Not me. Can't be me. What's the next phase in grieving?
Fear.
Anger.
Hostility.
Anger or hostility? What's a phrase that goes along with that?
It's his fault.
You don't have a snarky little comment for this one, do you?
It's Corey's fault.
Okay, this one is why me? What's the next one?
Bargaining.
Bargaining. What's a snarky little phrase for bargaining? No? Nothing?
Nothing.
Alright, instead of using a two-word phrase, let's use one that's a little bit longer. Please God, if you just allow me to stay alive until my grandson graduates from high school, then you can take me and I'll be happy with it. Or, if you allow me to live, I promise I'll donate all my money to charity. Or, if I survive this heart attack, I promise I'm never going to drink soda again. All of those are examples of bargaining. So bargaining, you could paraphrase as, what if we? Okay, you're trying to come up with a deal to keep you alive. Or, my son died, I'll do anything if I can just get him back. What's the fourth stage of grieving?
Depression.
Depression. And what's a little phrase that goes along with that?
Sad me.
Sad me. That's pretty good. We'll use that one. I was going to say woe is me, but I like sad me. Sad panda. All right, and what's number 5?
Acceptance.
Acceptance. Okay. What is acceptance? Give me a little phrase for acceptance.
It was a good life.
It was a good life. That looks like an H. I'll
Very
make
good
it look like
run.
an IT. Or it's me. Okay. Now, we call these the stages of grieving, but do they have to happen in that order?
No.
No. Does every person have to go through every one of these stages?
No.
No. Can they recover from stage 1 and move down to stage 4 and then move back to stage 1?
Yes.
Yeah. Is there any prescription, any reason at all, any way that we can think of that this doesn't happen? Maybe if somebody died that I didn't like, but I would probably still feel at least a little bit guilty because I didn't like them. But maybe only if I wish they were dead. No. Everybody's going to process these phases or these stages in their own time and in their own way. Some people will hit every single one of them, eventually. Some people will get stuck on one of them. I have a cousin whose son, 2 years ago in August, he went to a party, got some bad drugs, came home, fell asleep in his bed, never woke up. She's still lobbying to get the people who sold him those drugs to get them arrested for murder. Okay? Hasn't happened, don't know if it'll ever happen. But she is still stuck. She hasn't come to acceptance yet. It's been over 2 years and she's still stuck. Will she ever get to acceptance? I don't know. It's really hard to see sometimes. Because she cares so much. And he's gone and he's never going to come back. Now, what can you do to help? You can ask. You can ask if there's anything you can do to help. Just be aware that if you ask, they may take you up on it. Okay? Keep that in mind. You do need to reinforce the reality of the situation.
Be understanding of
Exactly
the
how do
situation.
you mean that?
Can I give you another example from my own history?
Please.
Just a couple years into my EMS experience, and way before I knew that you don't take every code to the hospital, we responded to a 29-year-old man with a history of diabetes who had suffered from cardiac arrest. CPR was in progress when we arrived, and we continued to do CPR the entire time until the paramedics got there. By the time the paramedics got there, we had been doing CPR we had been on scene for 20 minutes, okay, and had been doing CPR that entire time. And the paramedics traded off with us, so I was able to leave the patient while they continued CPR. They put their monitor on, they called medical control so they could see what drugs they could push, etc., etc. And not knowing any better, I was talking to the wife, and not knowing any better, she asked me what the next step was. And I said, well, they're probably going to load him up and put him in the ambulance, and they're going to take him to the hospital. She said, okay, we got to get ready to go then. The paramedics actually called it on scene and called the coroner to come out and help. And she was all sorts of hurt and confused that they did not load her husband up in the ambulance and take him to the hospital where he could have gotten better care. It's my fault. I'm the one that said they were going to take her to the hospital, or they were going to take him to the hospital. But what I should have done was reinforce the reality that her husband was likely not going to survive. He didn't survive. In as kind of a way as I could have, instead of giving her false hope by saying they're going to load him up and take him to the hospital. Be honest and sincere. Do you think that a person can tell when you're not being honest?
Yes.
Yeah, they sure can. Just because they're grieving doesn't mean that they're not people smart. Don't tell them that you know how it feels. Even if you really think that you do, I know how you feel. My mom just passed away last week. Well, great. That was your mom. This is my son. You don't know how I feel. Maybe you think you do know how they feel, but they're not going to see it that way. You know how they're going to see it?
Trying to minimize their grief.
Trying to minimize their grief. You don't want them to feel that way. You don't want them to feel like they are not important in that situation. Okay, and then lastly, you need to let them grieve in their own way. Did we talk about stress management already? Yeah? Okay, I'm going to skip that part of the chapter. So next we're going to talk about workplace issues. There are two types of, let's just jump right into it. So there's sexual harassment in the workplace. And really, unfortunately, in a lot of EMS and fire agencies, it still runs rampant. It's probably that way in a lot of other occupations as well, but if it is, I haven't seen it. Have I seen it in the EMS and fire service? Yeah. When I started firefighting in 2003, I was the first female firefighter ever on Wilder Fire's fire department. If you don't think I got a lot of crap for that, it's a small rural agency that, you know, it's a good old boys system out there. It was alive and well, and they had never had a girl firefighter before. And they were not thrilled about it. That wasn't that long ago, guys. It's 2016, 13 years ago. Okay, so there are two types of sexual harassment. Did you guys read this in your chapters?
Yes. We all did.
Harassment. Is it one? It's one. Harassment. Let's make it work. What are the two types of sexual harassment that are discussed in your book?
Quid pro quo.
What does quid pro quo mean?
This for that.
So give me an example.
If you do something for me, I'll give you a promotion.
Fair enough. What is the other type of sexual harassment?
Hostile work environment.
Hostile workplace. What? Give me some examples of what could create a hostile workplace.
Watching inappropriate video while somebody's next to you, or in the vehicle next to you, you're watching an inappropriate video.
Okay, that could create a hostile workplace. What else?
Constantly being treated differently.
Constantly being treated differently?
In a negative fashion.
Okay, what else? Well, even if you're being treated better, is that creating a hostile workplace for someone
true.
else?
That's true.
Yeah. So, what else?
Jokes.
Jokes, inappropriate jokes. What defines a joke as inappropriate or not?
If somebody finds
The
it
recipient.
inappropriate.
The recipient, right? It's not you that defines it, it's me as the receiver. I'm the one who defines it as inappropriate. Okay?
Or the bystander.
If you ask me out on a date, it might be considered a hostile workplace. Not me, I don't work with you. But, you know. How are you going to handle sexual harassment?
In which situation? If you're being sexually harassed, or if somebody thinks you're sexually harassing them?
Either way. Let's start with you feel like you're being sexually harassed first.
Discuss it with the person if you can.
Okay? If you feel comfortable about it, you can talk to the person. What if you don't feel comfortable with that? Blah, 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 blah.
Talk to a
Your
coworker.
supervisor.
A coworker?
Somebody, I would say somebody equal, so then they can maybe be comfortable talking to them.
I don't think you want to get your coworkers involved in your little love triangle.
Supervisor.
Okay? We're going to go from coworker to your supervisor. What happens if your supervisor doesn't do anything about it?
Their supervisor.
Yeah, their supervisor. And you're going to go up the chain until some point you get to the end of your chain, right? Once you're at the end of your chain, it might be time to move laterally. Where are you going to go?
Legal people?
The legal people? Or we're probably going to start with HR. If you don't get relief once you've gone through your chain, you got to move laterally instead of continuing to go up. So you're going to have to go over to HR. Or whatever your version of HR is.
That's what we got.
Now, what if you think what if someone has talked to you about you sexually harassing them? That was your other scenario, right? What are you going to do?
Stop.
What if you weren't doing anything wrong?
It was perceived as wrong, so
It was perceived as wrong, so you're going to stop.
don't do that again. Maybe speak with your own supervisor and let them know, be aware of the issue. If you don't feel like you were in the wrong, present them with the situation, and then they can either tell you you're wrong or not, but either way you should stop.
Either way, you should stop, yeah. And definitely talk to your supervisor if you feel like you need to talk to your supervisor. So that your supervisor is aware that someone has a complaint about your behavior and the steps that you are taking to rectify that behavior. Okay? It's probably going to be a kind of embarrassing conversation with your supervisor. Do you think it's going to be more embarrassing when that person goes to your supervisor? Yeah. One of the tests that our students have to take to graduate from high school is a career and readiness entrance exam. It's a brand new exam. But one of the questions on it is something similar to this. You have a problem with a coworker, how do you address it? Do you know what their answer is? Go straight to HR. There's none of this chain stuff.
That's the right answer?
That's the correct answer as is on that test.
What's wrong with America?
It's not only what is wrong with America, but you guys are fire and military. How do you think your chain of command is going to respond if you step outside the chain of command and go straight to HR?
They don't like it.
They don't like it. They don't like it from the fire side either. People, they don't like it from the state government side, right? People want the opportunity to resolve issues in-house if at all possible. Resolving issues in-house without bringing in outside help usually, not always, but usually helps to create a stronger team if the issues can get resolved.
HR doesn't even like it.
HR doesn't like it. Nobody likes it. Why do we go there first? Doesn't even make sense. All right. Any questions about what we covered in Chapter 2?
Harassing Benny.
Chapter 2. Any questions about that? No? Okay. Will you press the red button, please?